Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first graphic here, hazardous weather graphic showing red-colored area here still along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. That's the blizzard warning that's due to expire at any time. If it hasn't expired already, it will by 6 p.m. here Monday evening. And so winds coming down, although they were gusting upwards 40-50 miles an hour, creating visibilities less than a quarter mile at times in areas up there today. But that's going to be improving, currently is improving. And down to the south here, we have a winter weather advisory out for the Yukon Delta, as well as St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast up around the bend there, including Shishmaref. That's out, goes out actually tomorrow and tomorrow night for the areas here. And same thing up here for the Kobuk Valley, back into Selawik Valley, Kotzebue, Baldwin Peninsula, Northwest Coast, Kivalina, on up to, I believe, Point Hope, and probably Cape Lisburne thrown in there too, as well as Noatak Valley, and that's for the same conditions, winds gusting about 30 miles an hour here, creating blowing snow with some additional snowfall, but that'll reduce visibility to a half mile at times. And again, that kicks in midnight tonight until 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon for these areas. And moving on to satellite imagery, see mass of clouds rapidly exiting the state and rapidly more clouds coming in, following in behind. Here spreading eastward, some pretty good westerly flow coming up over the top of a ridge of high pressure here over the Gulf of Alaska, and an upward disturbance that's now starting to dive southeastward into the Mackenzie River Delta, Bay Area and Delta, as higher pressure tries to rebuild back here, but a lot of moisture had come up from the south coming over the top of that. And you see a lot of thick cirrus spreading into the North Slope, Brooks Range, and then dissipating as it comes to the south. Much thinner cloud band out here with that frontal boundary. Didn't look too bad here earlier on in the imagery, but that's past Shimia now, and they're just not even reporting showers and lighter winds. And winds coming up to about gust 40 miles an hour at Adak ahead of this front, but the precipitation has yet to start. It's really weakening here as it tracks eastward, and somewhat higher pressure in advance of that. And then we have this low tracking northward on the western side of that big ridge of high pressure here over the Gulf of Alaska and Northeast Pacific and into southern Alaska. Pretty good surface high sitting right over south central Alaska at about 1,033 millibars or so, and a little farther south than it had been, that allowing the moisture here to stream eastward into the northern interior. And rolling that through again, you can see just that going on. Also the anticyclonic curvature to the cloud band out there indicating developing high pressure in this area. And then the circulation weakening as it comes northward to the Alaska Peninsula, bringing the winds up a little bit, nothing too serious, especially for this part of the world. Akun Island, Cold Bay, gusts close to 40 miles an hour today. Also, as I mentioned, picking up along the southwest coast. Of course, Cape Newinam, quite windy area, seeing gusts approaching 40 miles an hour this afternoon, and also some rain occurring here along the Alaska Peninsula, light rain, clouds into Kodiak Island, and another change, clouds spreading into the eastern North Gulf coast there, actually kind of forming here, linking up with moisture coming down, enough lift to the atmosphere to produce the clouds, but any shower activity remaining offshore so far, and then some higher stuff spreading on down the Panhandle, but still a pretty good day down in that area. And for the chart, on the chart today, here's that high pressure center, roughly Susitna Valley or so, or near Squintna, and of course southern Alaska, clear skies again today, and light wind conditions here. Showers, rain, periods of light along the Alaska Peninsula here, winds increasing, but nothing serious. Again, gusts 35 miles an hour. And then again, any isolated showers are staying off the coast, at least last time I looked. They're still south of Yakutat with cloudy skies northeastward there, catching possibly Elephant Cove, but still a pretty clear day for the remainder of the Panhandle, high pressure to your west. and that front really weakening here as it tracks eastward toward the central Aleutians, and then clear skies, higher pressure, but what's not showing up, actually both Shemya and St. Paul had dense fog for a while today. Visibility is down to a quarter mile or less at times. Otherwise, really not too much here. A few clouds off the southwest coast. Maybe a rain or snow shower here over the southwest mountains, but I think it was more miss, if not complete miss, than hit. And for tonight, we've still got some flurries and moisture left over up here over the northwest. We can see the wind flow kind of turning south-southeasterly now, so I'll be pushing that off to the north with drying out conditions for Bristol or for Norton Sound and the Seward Peninsula. And then the snow moves into St. Lawrence Island. Winds coming up again, looking at gusts 30, 35 miles an hour, so nothing, winds really not a problem at all. And Yukon Delta, snow moving in, winds kicking up, especially along the coast, is slow tracking northward and beginning to wash out now. And this front bringing some rain into Kodiak Island tonight and already starting up on the southwest side of the island. I'll continue to spread northward into Kamishak Bay and possibly getting into Port Moller or so. I don't think any will get into Kachemak Bay. Definitely see an increase in the clouds, though, over southern Cook Inlet, and higher pressure ridging in ahead of the next pretty good storm system out there just southwest of Shemya and Attu. Late tonight, winds already beginning to respond to that with an increase late tonight. Otherwise, the southeast coast, other than some variable high stuff dropping in, mostly clear, virtually clear, with light wind conditions and high pressure dominating the eastern central interior. Again, still a risk of some snow showers. I think I'll be mostly north of Eagle, in over toward Old Crow, best chance. And big improvement, eastern Arctic coast, winds going light and the blowing snow ends. A few skiffs of snow possible there on the central Arctic coast and back toward Point Lay. Forecast for tomorrow, the low, actually this one, moves in and troughs out and is about this position tomorrow. And then this trough develops into a low and tracks northeastward there to, excuse me, south of the Kenai Peninsula. And looks like that could spread some moisture into western Prince William Sound. Otherwise, rain and snow, light rain and snow possible, or mixture precipitation. Always a slight threat of possibly freezing rain, but I don't think that'll amount to much if it occurs. And whatever precipitation occurs won't amount to much. Better chance of snow here as the surface and upper level trough kick inland. And so widespread area light snow here with that, thinning out as you go northwest, stays fair, but more clouds still streaming eastward here, but looks pretty good over the eastern North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as 40-mile country. And the Panhandle, another sunny, light wind day with clouds just off the coast. Big storm brings high-end gales into the western Aleutians, and the rain approaching Adak, but definitely being the gale force winds by tomorrow afternoon. High pressure pushing into the eastern Bering, and once this system pulls out, high pressure builds right back in over central Alaska, or south central Alaska here, back to the sunshine, and temperatures won't be as cold as with the last round, so milder temperatures, definitely highs above freezing, if not in the lower 40s in some areas. And this upper trough kicking off to the east, so snow showers tapering off from west to east, but lingering along the border till early evening. Big storm here, again, front weakening as pushes eastward, but holding together much better than the previous one. Rain and wind, Alaska Peninsula, mixed precipitation, and snow and blowing snow push on into St. Lawrence Island. And now change over the Panhandle, cloudy skies with a chance of moisture. And for lows tonight, you can see pretty mild by comparison to what they have been, looking at lows in the teens to mid-20s, and then highs tomorrow, 40s to lower 50s here, southern Alaska, mid-50s for Bristol Bay, and also down the southeast coast, highs in the 50s, followed by lows the next morning, staying in the 40s for the southeast coast there, and lows in the mid-teens up along the Brooks Range, mid-40s, pretty mild there for Bristol Bay, followed by highs Wednesday afternoon, lower 50s Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and possibly with the sunshine, that may be a little extreme here, but lower 50s for south central Alaska on down the southeast coast, and 20s, if you can believe that, for the North Slope and Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
We've got a flying weather here for Tuesday morning. IFR with the system moisture working its way onto the coast and in across Yukon Delta, northward to the Bering Straits, and some IFR mostly along and south of the Alaska Peninsula, the southeast flow, and another batch IFR here, Chiniak Marmot Bay across Fogneck Island, Barents up into Kamishak Bay, maybe Southern Cook Inlet, possibly. Port Muller and those areas. I don't think it'll get in Kachemak Bay, maybe some marginal VFR actually could come up the inlet as well. Otherwise, VFR over the interior, central and eastern, on down the southeast coast. Tomorrow afternoon, VFR holds here over the Panhandle, Yakutat, central eastern Copper River Basin, and northward there for most of the Arctic coast and North Slope. And then IFR here making its way northeastward. Coming into Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, so cloudier with definitely warmer and chance of moisture along with that, and definitely lower flying conditions with the IFR extending all the way out to the southwest coast, and then a big breakout here ahead of the next system with a narrower band of IFR in toward, but not quite making it to ADAC, but the definitely see an increase in the winds. And for the outlook on Wednesday, that area shifts eastward here. The main low center creating some more IFR farther to the west. So I have this break here across eastern Bering, VFR, St. Lawrence Island, Pribilofs, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, and Kodiak becoming VFR. And this area slowly shifting eastward, but still not making it to the southeast coast. Marginal VFR even having trouble reaching the coastline. It looks like IFR across the Copper River Basin, Upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, coming back, kind of meandering back to the west there, on up to the western Arctic coast, southward there to the Shishmaref and Central Seward Peninsula. For the afternoon, big improvement there. We'll lose that. Good VFR, high pressure building back in over the interior here, so much improved conditions flying-wise, at least ceilings visibility. Still some marginal VFR left over here along the eastern part of the state. IFR possible Yakutat, but again, this zone stuck, really having a hard time getting into the Panhandle. I think marginal VFR conditions will get into Elfin Cove and then Glacier and eventually Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Lynn Canal, just north of Juneau. And for Anatuvik, VFR pass-wise, and Adigan, same forecast optimistically. It looks like a pretty good VFR day tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill, though, at some point in the day tomorrow, look for IFR conditions. And rainy, starting out marginal, becoming IFR. Windy, though, ceilings visibilities will be lowering, clouds thickening, but it should stay above the marginal threshold, at least through the day tomorrow, and better chance of getting lower tomorrow evening. Isabel, good VFR. Mentasta, VFR as well. Tanita, VFR to start, becoming marginal VFR throughout the afternoon. And for Portage, marginal VFR becomes IFR, possibly by noon or before, definitely in the afternoon. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, warmer air coming northward here with southerly flow, upper level ridge, one port shifting eastward there, and another one forming farther out here to the west, so a little bit colder air right through here coming in, but not really all that cold. And icing, a lot of moisture coming into the interior here, so light to isolated, considerable moderate rime icing with this area and the shaded areas coming in south central Alaska, back to the Chukchi Sea, and then that next potent system out there with strong winds bringing another round of icing conditions, possibly reaching ADAC by early evening. And the upper level windfall chart jet stream here, kind of a wavy pattern. Here's the ridge trying to hold on, weakening though, but this trough's getting driven eastward due to the ridge building here ahead of the big storm southeast of Kamchatka Peninsula. And at 9,000 feet, you can see the trough pretty well here coming in. Southerly flow, warmer temperatures, more moisture, followed by west-northwest flow ridging, and then the big storm there, 40 or 50 to 65 knot winds out over Chimie-Attu, and 50 to 60 knots at 3,000 feet as well. Only 15 to 20 here, or 5 to 10 eastern interior, up to 20 to 30 knots, strongest here over the Yukon River, and 5 to 15 for the Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, Isolated moderate chop, northwest interior, but definitely moderate, possibly severe for the central western Aleutians.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get 1 hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, you know, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was or how fortunate. Of course, I just, you know, spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything. So you got to remember that, you know, luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at sea ice analysis. As you can see, farther north than it has been here of the Pribilofs, with the southerly winds continuing, and to a lesser extent here in Bristol Bay. But this whole area will tend to, over the next 5 days, with a couple surges of southerly winds coming in, the overall track will be to the north. And in between those surges of wind, higher pressure and winds become light and variable, at which time we'll start drifting around with the currents in whichever way the breeze blows. So it could be a minor temporary shift southward here anywhere along the ice edge. But again, the overall trend will be continued northward drift. And southeast coast, northwest 20 knots. On the southern coast, northwest 10 to 15. Pretty good wind day up there, 4 to 5 foot seas on the north coast. Lynn Canal, north 15, 3 foot seas. Central southern inside waters, north to northwest at 10 with seas at 2 feet. And the outlook for Wednesday. Light winds continue here over the inside waters. Northerlies at about 10 knots with 2 foot seas. Variable 10 knots on the south coast with seas of 5 feet. And easterlies of, 15 on the north coast, seas 5 feet. Small craft advisories now for Lynn Canal. North wind sustained 25 knots with 5 foot seas. And for Prince William Sound, variable to east winds tomorrow, light, 10 knots, seas slight as well, and southeast 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Northern Cook Inlet, northeast at 10, but small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet, north 25, east 30 for Kamishak Bay, southeast winds 25 knots for the Barren Islands, and east at 25 for the western North Gulf Coast. And for Wednesday, northerlies at 10 knots for Cook Inlet, northwest 25 for the Barren Islands, and for Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands, northwest 30, north to northwest 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast. And I think I forgot to mention Prince William Sound, northwest 15. And for Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, southwest 20, east side of Kodiak there, 15 knots from the south. Southwest 20 for the Alaska Peninsula, seas 5 to 9 feet. Southeast 20 for Bristol Bay. And for the outlook on Wednesday, Alaska Peninsula, south to southwest, 25 knots. 25 knot winds all the way up to Shelikof Strait where they turn westerly, and northwest 30 knots here. Again, higher pressure building back in and kick the northwest winds up there on the east side of Kodiak Island, sustained 30 knots. Fox Islands tomorrow, west winds 20 knots. Minimum gales spreading eastward to Adak and eventually to Atka at 35 knots from the southeast, seas building 8 to 11 feet, and 45 knot winds here for the western Aleutians, east-southeast 45, seas staying under 20 feet. And they'll swing around to the southwest on Wednesday with the front edging coming eastward here and weakening, but still hold that just under storm force or maximum gale velocity there at 45 knots. Seas higher though, 35 feet. And 35 to 40 knots south-southwest winds come into the central Aleutians, and minimum gales approach Nikolsky, but the Fox Islands general looking at southerlies at 30 knots with building seas. And the southwest coast tomorrow, brisk wind advisory, westerlies 25 knots, following that trough or helping to push that trough inland, coming down to 20 knots for the Pribilof, southwest 25 St. Matthew Island, and St. Lawrence Island, southeast 25 knots increasing, and east 20 for Norton Sound. Those continue to increase here, St. Lawrence Island, especially in the afternoon, that next system approaching and they'll come up to 35 knots sustained. Brisk wind advisories continue for the southwest coast at 30 knots. And gale warnings, southerlies 35 knots for St. Paul, St. George, St. Matthew Island. Lighter winds in Norton Sound. Eastern Beaufort Sea Coast, east-southeast 20 knots, southeast 20, central and west side. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, or Cape Beaufort to Wales, southeast at 30 for brisk wind advisories. And those brisk wind advisories hold and expand here to the central and even the east side, looking at west-southwest 25 knots, 30-knot winds central and western coast, 25 from Wales to Cape Lisburne. And for tonight, stays pretty good here over the eastern central interior, aside from the thick cirrus spreading eastward in that westerly flow, but staying dry, light winds, another dry, light wind kind of night for the southeast coast, although these clouds kind of building and lurking right off the coast. Rain spreads in the Kodiak Island, rain and snow, mostly snow here into the southwest interior as this low tracks northward. It weakens into a trough tomorrow. This one develops into a low and tracks northeastward just east of the Barren Islands. And that brings cloud, continued warmer temperatures into southern Alaska here. It stays dry over the panhandle. And high pressure building in here over the western Bering Sea ahead of the next big storm. Again, those just under storm force winds associated with that front with possibly moderate amounts of rain. Then high pressure builds right back into the interior again on Wednesday as that front approaches the southwest coast. Snow and blowing snow increase again for St. Lawrence Island, followed by pretty gusty westerly winds and showers behind that, rain and snow in the panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.